What is going on, FPL managers? Welcome to a new video from Fantasy Football Scout. It's game week 9 time, and we're recovering from a hectic game week 8 with plenty of high-profile benchings, and we've had some red arrows apiece, me and Rob. But we've still got players to play, don't we, Rob? We've got a couple of players from Arsenal from me, a couple of players from Palace for you. So there's green arrow hope for both of us. How are you doing, mate?
I'm not too bad. How are you doing? Still bunged up with cold, but
Yeah, it's not going away.
I'm just you know what? The worst thing I did, Ted, was chat to you about Sun before you started because I was in such a good mood. And I was like, we're gonna have to talk about the Sun situation here, and it's already wound me up. But apart from that, it's fine. I've got a small red arrow. But I said last week I'm thinking Palace are gonna do Arsenal. And I know some people in the chat, when I look back at the comments, were not agreeing with with that.
I wouldn't be
Fine,
surprised.
but,
I wouldn't be surprised if Palace get a result against Arsenal. But I think Arsenal go in probably favourites. But I mean, anything can happen in that game, I think. So we'll have to see.
Remember a few years ago when Palace were amazing away from home?
No.
I do, yeah, away from home. But I'm genuinely still. I know my rank is like 1.1 or 1.2 million or whatever. I'm still looking at points, and I still know I'm like. Actually, what are you on at the minute?
So I top on the screen
for this game week.
Yeah, I'm at 50 points at the moment, and you're at 47. We'll have a look at our results in a minute.
So you're what, 22 ahead of me?
Yeah, 22. I'm at 495. You're 473. So I mean, there's still enough to get back on track. I think that the safety score for this week, I was 4 off it, and you were about 6 off it or something. So
I've still got 2 lads left, a clean sheet, and a
Gallagher
double-digit haul, and
exactly. So we'll fingers crossed for those green arrows. Let's go straight on and have a look at your team. In game week 8, 47, so that's 51 with a -4, and you had a bit of Sun woe. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have fallen into this, and it's just, I thought you just got dealt a bad hand, mate. You couldn't have done anything else. And, commiserations, but what did you say it was? 12-point deficit because of that?
Yeah, because I said last week my plan was to roll a transfer, and that happened all the way through until my own stream on my own channel on Friday. And then boom, Rudiger out. And I thought, all right, that's okay because I've got Livramento on my bench. Rafinha might play. Gallagher's there. Brownhill play. And then boom, Son tested positive for COVID. He's definitely out for Newcastle. We're missing 2 to 3 games. So Rudiger being out with an unknown length of period, and Heung-min Son being supposedly out for 2 to 3 games. And this wasn't like some account with 200 followers or something. These were like big accounts connected to Spurs and bigger in the know accounts, and also big FPL accounts all saying like he's out. And I thought, I risk it with the likes of Christensen and DS and Cancelo play. I know Man City could rotate and stuff, and I didn't have Trent, had Rudiger, so I went Trent in for Rudiger and Mount in for Son because my other option was going for Mahrez and James. A lot of people went for James, but still, without Rudiger and some of the players, I wasn't that into Chelsea's defense at the minute. I didn't want to jump into James, and also he's not back yet. I had a feeling he wasn't 100%. I don't necessarily think he was going to walk straight back into the side because of the injury. So
you made the right.
I went for Trent.
You made the right call
for that, but obviously. If I did nothing with Rudiger, Livramento comes off the bench with 6 points. Trent got 6, so they cancel each other out. Mount didn't start again, so I know you've had Mount and you've been worried about it yourself, but I believe this was the time, and his stats from previous seasons, and I thought now he's back in the side, but because it's after the international break and he's played for England, I think so. The fixtures are so good, and we have the same feeling. His link up with Lukaku that. I thought instead of going for James or another defender where they're rotating heavily this week, and I can wait a week or 2 to see if Reece James or Chilwell is going to be the way to go, get Trent back in first, because obviously I was always going to get Trent back in, and go for Mount and go for a defender, midfielder, striker from Chelsea with these fixtures coming up. And then, of course, Mount gets 1 point. He comes off the bench for 25 minutes again. So he's played less than 90 minutes or just around 90 minutes of football in the last 5 game weeks.
Yeah, it's really annoying as a Mount owner, but we can't even get rid because of
He's got Norwich next.
the
Yeah.
juicy fixtures. I think it's Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley in the next 3. So a lot of people will be looking to load up on Chelsea. And even if Mount, he hasn't really had that many game minutes in recent matches, I think there's opportunity for Tuchel to tweak the formation, to tweak the strategy, and Mount probably does come in for the easier game. So I'm definitely not getting rid.
Yeah, I think, again, I think you're right. I think we're both just unlucky. I think he'd been injured, and then there was an international break where he's played for England, and he gave a few players a rest. Like, look at the James didn't play. We had Chilwell. We have the back 3 was what? Azpilicueta, Sarr, and Chalobah.
And
Christensen was in there. Like, so Christensen, I believe, plays 3 times out of 5, maybe.
Yeah.
But Sarr and Chalobah going in that defense.
I mean, it does worry me actually, because Sarr did look pretty decent, and I played Fantrax, and Sarr got a really, really decent score, which means his underlying performance was pretty impressive. But watching him, the eye test, he was pretty good as well, which means that there's a lot of depth in that Chelsea squad defensively, even with the youngsters, which means rotation could be rife. Christensen, as you say, probably plays 3 out of 5. But even with Chilwell, you've got Alonso. I think probably Chilwell is starting to come to the forefront, probably nailing that starting 11. Reece James probably does come back in for that instead of Azpilicueta on that right wing back role. But then again, he's always got that nagging doubt that he could get left out 1 or 2 games in 5. The same with with the other defenders. So that they call it Tuchel tombola, don't they? Instead of pet roulette. I think if you buy a Chelsea defender, you've got to expect them to be not completely nailed. But still, I think at the moment, Chilwell was probably the most intriguing one. Reece James closely followed because he's fresh back from injury, but I think he does have that assist threat.
I think he is the nailed right wing back. Like, Chilwell looks like he's now in front as the left wing back, which I don't think is a surprise, but you always have Alonso in the back of your head. But you could argue Azpilicueta is in the back of your head there, but it feels like Azpilicueta would be in the back 3 rather than the attacking wing back. I feel as though there's less challenge in that situation.
Yeah,
Chilwell.
His lack of intent of getting forwards does allow whoever plays in that left wing back role, whether it's Chilwell or Alonso, to completely bomb forward, because then they have a back 4 if Azpilicueta stays back. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic changes when Reece James comes back in. If you've got Chilwell on the left and Reece James on the right, then potentially both can bomb forward. But we will see. Chelsea were lacking in attacking ideas, I thought. So I think they need Mount. I think they need Reece James to come back in. And hopefully they can blitz Norwich.
But an issue with that is Mount came on for the last 25 minutes, and that's when Brentford absolutely hammered Chelsea, which is worrying for a Mount owner to sort of see that switch. Just going along there, my defense, DS, I can't believe it. So obviously there's always an opportunity with any Man City player to get rotated. So I thought, right, it's Diaz's turn. It rarely happens. He plays, 8 games out of 10, would you say? And they've got Champions League, and you're winning comfortably against Burnley. Why Pep Guardiola brings on his star centre-back against Burnley, a team sort of notorious for being physical, in the 72nd minute?
It's Pep doing Pep things, mate. It's just honestly...
That is just like, you throw a kid on. give a youngster a chance. It's in the bag. You're 2-0 up, but you throw on your most important defender in the 72nd minute instead of just giving him a full 90-minute break.
Yeah.
And of course that blocks my Livermore 6 points. But I'm also thinking of it from a managerial point of view that that astounded me.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with Jimenez for me, to be honest. What was it, the 90th minute he brought Jimenez on? Why?
88, yeah.
Yeah.
So Mount was on the bench. Jimenez for you, 88 minutes he comes on. So considering I've even got 51 minus 4, I've got 2 players in my side here that came on with 18 minutes and 25 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Salah captain, I think the whole world and their dog captain Salah this week, and what a sensational performance from him, holding up all of our FPL scores this week, basically, and the defence. But yeah, two Palace players for you tonight. Hopefully they get some points for you, and that turns that red arrow into a green arrow. So fingers crossed for you. Let's move on and talk about how I got on in game week 8. 50 points, a back four, not intended, but Rafinha was out. As per everyone's team, presumably. Livramento came in and earned a clean sheet, which was refreshing. The original intention was to remove Semedo and bring in Alexander-Arnold, but instead, because I had a Rudiger injury, I had to take Rudiger out and put Alexander-Arnold in. So that cost me 5 points because a Chelsea clean sheet would have propped up that Semedo points. I think Semedo probably moves to either Chilwell or Reece James for me this week, but we'll come to that at the end. Mount disappointing once again. Saka and Ramsdale to play for me tonight. Depends on that result.
It's literally me v you, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
You got 2 Arsenal, I've got 2 Palace. This could either make me catch up with you or pull further away.
Yeah, I mean, if Gallagher hauls and Palace keep clean sheet,
Palace, and yeah, Gallagher's involved with both.
Yeah, 100%. But it equally could go the other way because Saka.
Yeah, ifs and buts are like candy and Christmas will be every day.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. I'm pretty happy with my team actually going forward. So I look at them with the bus team because Livramento is a really decent sub player, and so is Ben White. But Rafinha comes back in next week, and it all looks a little bit more rosy. Mason Mount is probably the only one that I'm going. Well, actually, no, that's not true because Antonio looks, his stats are excellent, but the fixtures coming up. Tony is getting some decent fixtures from game week 10. It does make it tempting to move Antonio to Tony because Jimenez still has some decent fixtures. So that is another move I'm potentially eyeing up next week, not this week, but we'll see. We'll see. I think the team's in relatively good shape, but I feel I'm a little bit frustrated at the moment because I seem to be just treading water at this 500,000 rank mark. And I can't make any headway. And I think I don't want to fall into the trap of playing too adventurously because then it can either go forwards or backwards. I could easily end up with 1 million rank next week. I just need to be calm and wait for my opportunities, I think. But yes, what do you think of the team? Is it something that you... What are the holes in my team, Rob?
Well, we're both... I know yours is accidental, but... We're both 4-3-3. I actually, I've said before about being like really big at the back. But I said last week, Livramento's the key. If you got him for 4.1, I think has he gone up to 4.3 now? Still think his value in the fixtures coming up for 4.3 million. If you can go for a good 4 at the back, like Trent, 2 City and a Chelsea, or 2 Chelsea and a City, whichever way you want to do it. And I've played around with like Antonio, Tony, and another budget striker. And in the midfield, you could have like Salah, Son, and you might be able to wiggle stuff around for like a KDB or like a Bruno, like have a power 3.
It's
so
interesting.
That's something I've been looking at.
It's this balance between bench depth, like how many millions do we have on our bench, and having the ideal starting 11, and that's the difficulty. Because I think if I play 3-4-3 most weeks, which is my intention, Livramento probably doesn't get a look in until there are some injuries or some absentees through, like Rafinha was coming back from international duty. So it's an interesting one. Son does look appealing from game week 12, doesn't he, with some decent fixtures for Spurs.
Anytime. He's like the most clinical player in the last 5 years or something ridiculous. I think Sky Bet did that stat. But just going as well with the 5 defenders I keep talking about with some bench depth, it's like, so if you take a punt and I've got Cancelo, Trent, and James or Chilwell in 3 of my 5 defenders, they are more like midfielders. Yeah. So for me, for the value of if they get rotated out and I've got a Gallagher on my bench or a Smith Rowe on my bench or a Mbomo on my bench, for example, like I'll take the risk on a James, on a Chilwell, on an Alonso, on a Cancelo, because I know I've got some depth there. So I'm still pushing towards that. I'm just unfortunate that, before my wild card, Trent gets injured. And then after my wild card, Rudiger's got injured. And I can't find myself to get there. But Livramento, when do we start taking that seriously? And just with the fixtures coming up for Southampton, when do we start playing him? Burnley,
Yeah.
Watford, Villa, Norwich, the next 4.
Yeah, we'll have a look at the Saints fixtures. Actually, no, they're not on the fixtures, but I think they are decent fixtures anyway. But it's really tricky because I guess you could use it as an excuse to downgrade a premium defender and then upgrade one of your midfielders to the likes of Son going forwards. That's definitely an option you have on the table. But for me, Livramento staying on the bench as a decent first sub for a while, I'm afraid. Well, it is what it is. Let's move on and talk about some of the stats. We'll start with the fixture ticker. We've got... actually, no, this is the wrong one. I didn't change the fixtures. Outrageous. Let's go back to my team to talk about it and then I'll fix that.
I'll tell you what, as you're fixing that, do you want me to read you? Now, this is something I found on Twitter that is horrifying about Lukaku. So I think you got 4 points from your strikers. 3 points. You got 2, 3, 4. You got 4 from your strikers, and I got 5 from my 3 strikers. So for people thinking about Lukaku, 1, I'm not recommending selling before Norwich. Of course, I'm not. He has blanked the last 4. He scored 3 goals. He had a good start, but if you're looking at Lukaku, right?
Yeah.
Lukaku isn't the problem. The formation is. And similar to how we see the middle forward of Liverpool and the middle forward of Man City, I know that you've got Firmino at Liverpool and you used to have Jesus at Man City, but it switches around, right? But it's about the problem with that position, especially if it doesn't get service. Let me read you now. I'll try and do it as quickly as I can. This was what I found on Twitter from someone called Andrew Gower, and he got it from Transfer Market, the website, right? Premier League goals scored by Chelsea's starting striker, that middle front man for Chelsea, in every Tuchel game. First game of Tuchel to now, right? So every number is a game of Tuchel and how many goals that key striker has scored, right?
Okay.
0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 2, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 0, 0, 0.
I was worried that you started talking in binary code there, but yeah, that is astounding.
People are looking at Lukaku and thinking, what is going on? And I said to you a couple of weeks ago when I watched the game, and he did nothing and almost scored a hat trick, and the chances were limited by Brentford, which I think is fair play to Brentford, by the way. But just reading out that list of how many goals that position, I know the player has changed to Lukaku, but Lukaku's there now, and it's a huge problem. Maybe that it's not the spearhead of the attack that we think it is.
I think
that's why I've seen people going for Werner this week because and the previous week, because it feels as though I'm not getting anything. Like, where's the value I'm getting for 11.7 million? It'd be madness to sell him before Norwich.
Yeah,
I can't even suggest that. But if I didn't have Lukaku now, what has he done to make me get him?
I think it's just the reputation that he has over Werner. I mean, the numbers that you've quoted there, Werner was striker for most of those games, I'd say. And obviously he's suffering from a massive conversion difficulty. And I mean, Lukaku hasn't proven that he's anything different in recent games. He's blanked the last 4, for example. Yep. It's just his reputation. We know that he can score goals, and we know that he's a bit of a flat track bully. He certainly was for Everton. So against Norwich, against Newcastle and Burnley, there's no reason why he can't start firing. I think Werner has a little bit something more fundamental about his conversion. So I don't think we should be worrying too much. And I think people should still be looking to bring in Lukaku. I did manage to fix the fixtures. So we've got game weeks 9 to 14 now, and Leeds are top of the ticker. So Rafinha owners should be pretty happy about keeping. And I guess Leeds have been underperforming a little bit because they've been a lack of personnel issues. Sorry, not lack of personnel issues, lack of personnel. Their defence has been depleted. Bamford's been injured. Plenty of other issues as well. So hopefully they can get some players back for this run of games. But Rafinha looks decent to keep because Wolves, Norwich, Brighton and Palace in the next 6, along with Leicester and Spurs. And Spurs who haven't exactly been too solid at the back either. So I think Leeds, I'm not sure there are many other players you can buy from Leeds that make sense other than Rafinha. So it's a bit of a boring one to think about, really. But if you've got Rafinha, you'll be happy. Brentford are the interesting one. I think from game week 10, you've got the 3 prime fixtures: Burnley, Norwich, and Newcastle. And I think a lot of people will be loading up on Mbeumo and Tony. I think probably Tony edges it for me slightly for some reason, even though
I don't know why. People say talisman, people say penalties. Is it 6 times? Is it the woodwork this season? Is it 6?
That just shows that most of his efforts are off target. You remember that shots graphic I did last week?
Yeah, and it was all red for him.
It was all red.
Does woodwork come under green or red in that chart?
A woodwork would be off target. So
really, I thought hitting the woodwork is on target.
No, because on target would mean that you have to test the keeper. It either goes in or it doesn't.
Oh, well, there you go. If that included as an on target, it'd be the most clinical, like almost one of the most clinical players, most accurate players in the Premier League. If we change that post to green over red.
It's difficult to digest whether that's a good or a bad thing. I'm not really sure. It does show that he's getting in the right positions and he's shooting fairly close to goal. But can he adjust?
I would be going Mbeumo. Are we just going to call it Mbeumo? I think it's Mbeumo. I call it Mbeumo all the time, Mbeumo. But I just think for his price, I believe he, take it with a pinch of salt with the price rise predictions. But it's said that he's going up tonight. But 5.5, if he goes up 5.6 million, he's out of position. He's obviously the most attacking player, like most forward player for Brentford. I went for Tony, and I went for Gallagher. I went for Gallagher and Tony over Mbeumo and someone slightly higher than Tony. Someone said it in the chat before we started the streaming about who they'd recommend, Tony or Mbeumo, and I have to go for Mbeumo.
That's completely fair enough. And I suppose that choice can be dictated about who you want to get rid of, whether it's a midfielder or whether it's a forward. So that choice might be taken out of your hands. I think both are decent options at the end of the day.
Best XG non-penalty under 7 million is Mbeumo.
Yeah.
And best XGI under 7 million is Tony.
Nice. I mean, there you go.
So...
There you go. Tony, we've seen in previous charts, a lot of big chance created, Tony. So he's also being the provider, which isn't a bad thing for a striker. We've seen Jimenez do it for multiple years. So, yeah, I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Either are good, and it will dictate from which player you want to get rid of. So that's completely fair. Let's move on from Brentford. Chelsea, next on the list, with those 3 excellent fixtures. Exactly the same for Brentford just a week earlier. So we've got Norwich, Newcastle and Burnley. And you can't get better than that, really. So maybe if Burnley was Watford.
Well, they've got Watford in week 14 as well. So
yeah, exactly. So, I mean...
It's on the list.
Doubling or trebling up on Chelsea players.
This is why I went for Mount, because I've got the bench. It's just unfortunate that Mount, it's likely that he comes on. But... that's why I thought I'd go attacking and having that Mount Lukaku double up front rather than defense. Because those 3 fixtures, if they can't score minimum 2 goals in each of those games, I think that's a problem. I think I've said since like before the season, or game week 2 or whatever, when I said I think Chelsea could win the title. And I know they say like goals win games, but defenses win titles, which I get, but you got to be smashing those teams.
You have to be. Yeah, you have to be. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Tuchel just went slightly more defensive against Brentford, because Brentford scored 3 against Liverpool. He'd be clued up to that they're a fairly attacking side. So and they've proven it so far this season. I wouldn't be surprised once the fixtures ease up, as they do now, that he just frees up that formation a little bit more. Bring in James, bring in Mount. That's the service that Lukaku needs, and then he'll get some goals. That's why.
I don't think Lukaku's been terrible or super wasteful. He's off scraps.
Yeah, no service. Yeah, so yeah, fingers crossed that will improve. Wolves next on the list, and I think so. Jimenez's ownership has been on the up recently. No sort of red fixtures in that next 6: Leeds, Everton, Palace, West Ham, Norwich, and Burnley. So very decent, consistent fixtures for Jimenez to access. I think Hwang is like a fairly newish opportunity for people to access at 5.5 million. I think he is. He might have gone up to 5.6 now, but he's still a decent option. I think he's getting played every week as well. So fingers crossed Wolves can. What's your view on the Wolves' defence at the moment? Because they seem to be leaking a few more goals recently.
Well, they are the second best team for minutes per big chance conceded. So I was actually going to talk to you about the fact that you still got Semedo, who arguably, he's a bit wasteful in that final third. And I know that they've conceded a couple of goals against Villa, but in terms of how many big chances they concede, they're second best still. And minutes per XG conceded, they're second best. Man City's the best, and Wolves are second best. So shots inside the box isn't too bad. So
we'll come to look at defense stats next up, actually, but. It's an interesting one because 2 Wolves defenders scored against Villa, who are next on the fixture ticker, actually.
Cody.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people.
I've had it this season.
I know it, and what a game week to score as well, because presumably everyone's using their benches this week through some of the high-profile benchings. So that maybe would have got Connor Cody's points if they put him on the bench. But it's just a pity. We're like, you owned him previously, don't now. But it's what could have been at the end of the day. But I think Wolves, as you say, their defensive solidity is still good. And with those fixtures, there's no reason why they can't.
The second for big chances conceded as well. So it's not even just like XG and minutes per big chance, but big chances themselves, they're second best. So,
it was a decent game between Wolves and Villa, wasn't it? Does anyone from Villa catch your eye a little bit? Is Danny Ings back on the menu?
No, we talked about this last week, and we both kind of agreed that there's no one really like. So speaking of when we go on to talk about defenders later, that attack. Cash has the most amount of penalty area touches for defenders so far this season. So, but then we talked about, and I just feel 5.1 million for Cash or 5 million-ish for a Villa defender is too much for me. There's no one in midfield. Like McGinn at 5.8, he's just scored a goal, but he scored 2 all season, so I'm not going to bring in McGinn. And then up front, you've got Watkins and Ings, but 7.8 million for Ings.
Yeah.
That's his first goal since game week 2.
Yeah.
It not exactly screaming form to me to say Villa, I've got Antonio Lukaku. Someone's got to walk in here and kick one of those boys out, and I don't think it's a Villa player.
I think what they're suffering from is they were really good last season, and therefore FPL have bumped up their prices a little bit in FPL. Yeah. So you were saying Matty Cash is 5.1. If he was 4.5, I think he would be worth a consideration.
For sure.
Sure. So and Martinez is 5.5. He becomes unaccessible. Danny Ings is quite expensive, but I think out of all of them, I think Ings is probably the one that could have a run of form, and we have to consider him. But I can't see it elsewhere. And Burnley, I think, are off the charts as well. Off the menu as well. Who are next on the fixture ticker, which is why I mentioned them. So it's not really worth considering. Let's move on to talk about defence ability. And we mentioned Wolves there. We've got this chart here, which is small chances conceded across the bottom. So furthest to the right means that teams are conceding a lot of the difficult efforts from outside the box, for example, and big chances conceded across the top. So further to the top, teams are conceding more easy efforts, more clear-cut opportunities. And we've got Newcastle, Watford and Norwich, as you would expect, top right, the worst of the bunch. And these are the teams we definitely have to look to target with captaincy, with our attacking players and our FPL teams. But I think that's fairly intuitive, right? From watching those three teams, they've seen the most leaky at the back, and I think the stats completely demonstrate that. Conversely, we've got Man City, best of the bunch, bottom left, conceding hardly any chances at all. Best for small chances conceded, best for big chances conceded. Closely followed by Liverpool, Wolves, as you mentioned, and Brighton. So Brighton have been fairly decent. The problem with Brighton is that they they typically just underperform in both areas, which is unfortunate. But this is consistent across multiple seasons. The thing that really surprises me here, Rob, is Chelsea.
Chelsea, yeah, it sticks out, doesn't it?
It does
Massively. We're all looking at how good Chelsea are in the clean sheets, and we've all got City defenders and Chelsea defenders, and probably Trent, right? We've talked about Wolves, Brighton, Brentford defensively. They're up there in the stats, are doing really well. But to see Chelsea, basically, layman's terms, if you're top right, you're not doing very good in defense, right?
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to put it, right? Top right, bad, bottom left, good. Yes. And the fact that Chelsea is budging up to that top right is well surprising.
So,
really.
I mean, the interesting thing here, let's add another layer to this. Chelsea are top right, but the numbers in the middle, in their little blue circle, that's the number of big goals conceded, that's the number of small goals conceded. In effect, that's the number of goals they've conceded. And if you compare those numbers to the teams around them in that top right area, it's significantly lower than any other team, which means that Mendy has bailed them out on more than one occasion, and that was completely evident against Brentford. He was arguably man of the match, wasn't he?
Who was it off the line? Was it Chalobah?
Yeah, Chalobah. Yeah, he was so
Chalobah off the line as well, right?
He was so like laissez-faire about it as well. He just sauntered back and then cleared it off the line. It was it was a good bit of defending.
Man of the match out of 8 games, 2 man of the matches for Chelsea has been the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Villa and Brentford, which again, that's worrying. I think that's worried that your goalkeeper is man of the match against Brentford. I'm not trying to be mean against Villa and Brentford, but if you're supposed to be a title contender and your goalkeeper's getting a man of the match in those games, and then incredibly they've conceded 3 goals all season, the same as Man City.
Yeah, no, it's mental. Clearly, Mendy is very talented. And when we're looking at the goalkeeper charts from the previous weeks, we have seen Mendy top right for saves and XG prevented. So it's clearly backing up that he's proving himself actually not bad value at maybe 6 million, especially as he's not going to get rotated as much as the rest of the Chelsea defence. Maybe Kepa gets a game, a sympathy game once in a while, but... Yeah. With this form, I just don't see Mendy getting dropped. So, but I just can't face spending 6 million on a goalkeeper. I don't know.
That was a choice that I was faced on my wild card. It was the decision that I made. Instead, I went for 2 Chelsea defenders. I wanted the attacking threat of like Rudiger or the solidity, because 5 million Christensen I was going to get, and then it was between Rudiger and Mendy, and I took the cheaper option.
Exactly. Like Christensen at 5 million is really decent value. And then you have potentially the left wing backs and the right wing backs who almost play as wingers or strikers sometimes in the case of Chilwell or Alonso. So it seems like the value is elsewhere, but potentially Mendy is also value. So it's a bit of a difficult one to digest. But Chelsea are a bit of an enigma at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if they start leaking a few goals here and there, but
which is the reason I didn't go for James as well. The fact that Rudiger's out for an unknown period of time. I don't think it's going to be too long. It seems like a muscle strain, but they were so lucky against Villa, and they were so lucky against Brentford. The fact that they've only conceded 3 goals, like at the start of the season when Liverpool were keeping clean sheets, and they were really lucky to do so. So I didn't fancy like Man City, bottom left, 3 goals conceded. That is a deserved, like they're showing they are that good defensively. Even Liverpool to an extent now are showing that they're that solid. Chelsea, I can see leaking goals, which hopefully brings them out their shell a little bit, because like I'm saying, like they're not feeding Lukaku. I don't know what it is. It's working because they're European champions and they're top of the league. So they must be doing something right. But I do think a little bit of fortune is is
Yes,
on their
I
side at the
agree with
minute.
you. I agree with you. I think they've had a little bit of fortune. I think these stats are also a little bit skewed about their opponents they've had in the last six. They've played some tough opponents, therefore they've probably conceded more shots than they usually would. So with a good run of fixtures coming up, they're probably going to revert back to conceding fewer shots in total. And we've seen last season that they were close to Man City in terms of number of chances conceded. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do revert back and then Mendy becomes a worse option and then they might even continue to have clean sheets. So I think take these stats with a pinch of salt, but it certainly does describe what we've seen in games. Let's
But
move
the
on from...
next three is Norwich, Newcastle, and Burnley. So
Exactly, yeah.
if you were worried before, look to the future and look at those three games, and that screams 3 clean sheets.
Yeah, arguably it does. So let's move on from Chelsea because we've dwelled on them quite a lot. We've got Man United up there, and that doesn't really surprise me. A lot of memes or gifs going around about how badly Harry Maguire defended against Leicester, and obviously
Poor.
it was poor. But he was fresh back from injuries. I don't want to make excuses for him, but they've got Liverpool next. Do we see Man United struggling against Liverpool in sensational form?
Oh, Liverpool are looking back towards what they were when they were champions, or neck and neck with Man City. And yeah, and again, I don't want to put the boot in on Watford here, but that could have been a cricket score because it was 5-0 in the end, but and Watford grew into the game, but they only grew into the game because Liverpool took their foot off the gas, right? If Liverpool kept playing like they did the first 45 minutes for the full 90, big trouble for Watford. Would have been huge trouble.
Yeah, I mean, Watford defended very lackadaisically.
We'll talk about this later, but at the minute, Salah's my captain. But we'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about that later because we're gonna argue about that one. I can see it from both angles, to be honest, but yeah, we'll come to that later on. The other ones on this chart, I think Brentford, they've got some decent stats. Like, how many people own Brentford defenders? I mean, you could have Raya in goal, I suppose. He's probably the best way into it, but they seem like very decent. Like that 0.33 big goals conceded above Brentford name. Compare that to the number of big chances they've conceded, which is about 1.7. That is thinking about conversion, big chance conversion is about 50%. So the fact that Raya is stopping much more than 50% of those big chances means that he must be a sensational goalkeeper to prevent those big chances. And remember that Jota chance when they were playing Liverpool? Jota was like 6 yards out and Raya with that sensational save. So that's probably just showing...
I sold him. Yeah, you don't have to rub it into. It's fine. All right.
Oh, mate, it's going to become a theme, isn't it? You selling excellent players.
Everyone should just buy who I sell, and then everyone will do a lot better than me. But I'll tell you now, Brentford are easily the most superior side in the air.
Oh, love that. Have you got some stats?
And Tony is number 1 for the aerial threat.
Decent.
So there you go. But I made a shout out to a couple of guys in my community, like Shui. He started the season with Pinnock, because he said he'd seen him before and seen preseason. He's always attacking fullback. And I think, did Pinnock double-digit haul against Arsenal first game of the season?
Something like that. I think he scored a goal as well, didn't he?
He got 11 points, assist, and a clean sheet first game of the season and 2 bonus. So, people have been doing it. And they are, I don't want to say the Villa of last year, because I think they're even potentially better. The value's there for 4.5 million if people want to go 3 at the back and Livermento's on the bench and they want another 4.5 or to rotate. Is it game week 10? The fixtures are easy? Yeah. For game week 10, Burnley, Norwich, Newcastle. Again, screaming clean sheets. And I think the problem with Brentford is when they're going to play the easier teams, they need to put them to the sword. Like, we know how solid they are defensively and how they can counter and how they can push. But like we saw against Chelsea, sometimes they can't break through. And when they're against a team that they should be beating because they're in better form, that's when they might actually come undone, because they lost at home to Brighton 1-0, which I think they would have been disappointed. So just coming up against teams where maybe they feel they're in the better form, that's when I think we'll see
Yeah.
what they're really made of. I think they're great against big teams. I'm interested to see how they're going to approach the games where, it's against Burnley, Norwich, Newcastle, where in our heads now we're thinking Brentford are the better side currently. So interesting to see.
I wish I had gone a Brentford defender over Ben White. Ben White's on my bench, but regardless, I think having Ramsdale and Saka already, I think Ben White was a bit overkill. But I think, Brentford defenders are typically about 4.5 million. And if they're going to sit on my bench anyway, then. But I think just looking at Arsenal, comparing them to Brentford's numbers, I think Brentford are a better shout for clean sheets. So we'll have to see. Let's move on to talk about defenders. And we've got a defender chart up here, which is basically just expected assists across the bottom versus expected goals across the top. And we've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, as per usual, far out to the right. He's obviously excellent for creating chances. He does that a lot through corners, it has to be said. But he's also, I think it goes without saying that he's excellent value at 7.5. There's a lot of people that would say he's not essential because he doesn't consistently earn assists as he did maybe a couple of years ago when Robertson and Alexander-Arnold were taking it in turns to assist. I think we need to see a run of form for him to assist more.
He was unlucky, though. He did a beautiful ball through to Salah, and Salah was one-on-one, and he took a dodgy touch.
Yeah.
That's an assist that should have been there. And he almost scored just before he got taken off. So
yeah,
people were worried about not having Trent going into the game, thinking it could be that Leicester big hole situation. Yeah. And he almost got it. Like, just small margins like that just make the season. But he's so deadly. And what do you think then about the matchup between him and Luke Shaw? Because Luke Shaw's the attacking defender for Manchester United. You can argue Robertson is as well, but Trent is the more attacking defender for Liverpool.
Yeah.
Do you think this is going to be like them clashing? Do you think it just means that Trent is going to get space in behind Shaw and Shaw's going to get space in behind Trent? Because Trent's going to have space in that hole, which he's so good at when he dinks it and swings it into the box.
Yeah.
I think that is going to be a really interesting matchup for me.
I don't think it particularly matters what the matchup is for Trent, because he doesn't really look to take, one-on-ones with the opposing left back. He will look to get space in front of and then cross it in, or play a 1-2 or whatever, or feed in Salah or feed in the runner in behind. So I don't necessarily think it's a massive issue, even though Shaw is fairly decent. But I think you mentioned Robertson and Shaw, both of those players who were fairly decent for attacking numbers have regressed a little bit. They've got worse. They're not even on this chart, which is
Robertson's a big surprise. Yeah, he's been a bit off with that injury, hasn't he?
He has been, and that has allowed Trent to monopolise basically all of the attacking threat from the defensive line, other than Van Dijk from set pieces, for example.
I mentioned before the season started about Van Dijk. One of the biggest things Liverpool missed wasn't his defensive presence. It's his ability to get the ball and spray it diagonally to the wings. Either Trent bombing it or Robertson bombing it all the way to Mane or Salah. And having him back, you see it, the outballs. Matip tries it sometimes as well. That's a huge thing that they missed, to spread the ball. And that's why last season it felt like Liverpool at times looked so slow, so lethargic, because they weren't getting the ball and pinging it straight out there, because Van Dijk's got that ability. But I think just the last thing I'll say about Trent is I think he's going to find the half spaces, because Manchester United have a huge gaping problem with their midfielders. And it's why they play Fred and McTominay, and why Pogba is a problem, because wherever you put him, I think he's second best in that team. Left wingers, I don't think he's United's best left winger. Centre mid, I think he lets them down because those two centre mids protect the back line. But I can see that with the formation that United are playing, and why Ronaldo wasn't the best idea to sign him, was I think Trent's going to get space, not on the wing, but just on the inside, and become more of a threat. I would genuinely be not surprised at all if we see Liverpool concede, which I think is more than possible, but I'd be really surprised if we don't see at least a couple of big chances created from Trent, let alone a potential assist.
Yeah, it's become sort of
Loads of space in
expected
the middle there.
from Trent that he normally does do a couple of big chances or creates a couple of big chances in a match. But yeah, going back to what you were saying about Man United, it's interesting because there's a lot of disgruntlement at Man United. They've had a couple of poor results, and Ollie might be tempted to mix it up a little bit. He might put Rashford in on that left wing. Now he's back. He might mix up another couple of players. Who knows? But as you say, the wingers and Bruno Fernandes, they're not exactly defensive players, so he's going to have to play that double pivot, and it really depends on that, how much space Liverpool have in behind. But yeah, I don't see Liverpool not getting a result at United. It seems certainly on form, but you never know. It's sort of a derby, isn't it? It's a very big rivalry.
Yeah, it always throws a little bit of the stats out the window when
exactly.
it's a big game.
Like exactly.
That. So they might be pumped up for it, but I mean, the way Liverpool look right now and how lackluster United look. I mean, the strangest thing is, though, United created the most chances this weekend, and it didn't feel like it.
Is that down to Bruno Fernandes, maybe?
Shots. Bruno Fernandes with 8.
Yeah.
The most this game week. But when I was watching and looking back at the highlights, it didn't feel like United particularly were that creative. I didn't even know Ronaldo was playing. Okay, I never even saw him. But Leicester with the most shots, 22. Liverpool with second, so conceding the most amount of shots, and they're about to face Salah, Mane, and probably Firmino off the back of a hat trick. I think that is. That's worrying. But like I say, United could easily get a goal. Bruno with 8 chances created. United with the most overall chances created for this game week, until Gallagher overtakes Bruno Fernandes tonight when he's going to create 9 chances. Come on, Gallagher. Then I think... But here's another thing. It's not just a derby. How many times do we see these big games? Now, fortunately, Liverpool and Man City threw that out the window when they played. But take, for example, Liverpool and Chelsea. Sometimes these big games just become this 0-0, 1-0, 1-1 situation where it's just like United are going to sit and try and counter, and Liverpool are going to dominate possession, and it's just going to be one of those games. But if Liverpool break through early...
I don't see it. I don't see it. I think even if Man United sat for some reason, I don't think they would even be able to withstand the pressure. Exactly. So
not with how Salah is right now. I mean, arguably, would you say on form, he's the best player in the world right now?
A lot of people are saying that. When you're watching it on TV, yeah, a lot of pundits are saying that he is, and I don't think there's anything to dispute that. Messi's not really doing anything.
The best of all time, or the best in the last 2 years, or the whole season, or whatever. But this season, the first 8 games across the leagues and stuff, I don't think there's a better player than Mo Salah right now.
Exactly. Well, I think it goes without saying none of us are looking to bring in Man United defenders. They're not on this chart. They're not in the best defensive for attacking potential, and their fixtures are getting really bad. So, regardless, not looking at Man United defence. Let's talk about some other players on this chart. We've got Chilwell up there at top left, along with Cancelo, and they seem to be the 2 main buddies for Alexander-Arnold in that back 3, the best back 3. I think that's what I'm looking to get to with Semedo to Chilwell. Have pretty much the exact funds to do that this week. So I think Alexander-Arnold, Cancelo, Chilwell is a decent back 3. And if you need to supplement that, you may as well either go for a Man City player or maybe some other cheap ones. But we've got Janssen and Pinnock there for Brentford. We were talking about Brentford solidity, so I think either of those would be decent. Alonso's probably out of the window now because his place has been lost potentially. Azpilicueta there for Chelsea as well. If you fancy maybe some more solidity of starts, because his versatility, whether he plays right wing back or not, he's probably going to tuck in and play right centre back. But then again, you lose that attacking threat. So if you were adventurous, I think Chilwell is the most obvious one. And we talk about Cash and Target, but they're not good value. Livramento's there, but he's not as good as the rest of them. But a 4.3, I don't think we really can complain that much.
No. And most people got him for cheaper, right? If they've probably went for 4 or 4.1.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, other than that, I don't think there are many standout attacking options. If I
I
think,
tell you what, we talked about him last week, and I don't want to put this in the same situation as
oh,
Pascal Gross,
it's
right?
Cucurella, isn't it?
No, but he is still on fire. I do want to point. He's not even on the list here.
No.
But since I've pointed out Cucurella, he's gone on and got what is it? 9 points and 5 points. But no, it's not him. He's on the list. It's Matt Ritchie.
No way.
Do you know for expected assists for all players under 7 million, Matt Ritchie's number one?
Wait, what? Oh, for under 7 million. So
Under 7
Trent.
million of play. Yeah, under 7 million for all players, Matt Ritchie's number one, 2.07 expected assists.
What, including forwards and midfielders?
That's what it says here.
Crazy.
He's top of the charts. And he's third overall for chances created.
It
He's
must be
joint with
through
Trent. He's joint with Trent on 22.
No one in their
Not
right mind is going to buy Matt Ritchie, and it's probably through corners and stuff, isn't it?
Just telling you the numbers. You're the stats man. I'm not changing anything here. It's right there in black and white to see. Matt Ritchie, 22 chances created. Trent Alexander-Arnold, 22 chances created.
That's absolutely fine.
Telling you.
I think we need to treat numbers with context, though, don't we? And those big zeros in his bubble, which means goals and assists.
I'm not suggesting Matt Ritchie, but I'm just really interested when it stuck out. I was like, what? Matt Ritchie, best expected assists of all players under 7 million in these joint second best for chances, second most chances created. Bruno way out in front, by the way, Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
Which, if he was cheaper and he's still on penalties, he's still a good option. Not now because of the fixtures, but he's still posting the numbers and he's still looking like good old Bruno, ticking along nicely. But yeah, there you go.
Let's move on and talk about some attacking stuff. I'm bored of defense.
We can still talk about Matt Ritchie because of his attacking.
No, I mean you've destroyed the defensive chat with Matt Ritchie. So let's talk about attack. We've got teams attacking prowess up on the screen, which is small chances towards the right. That's the difficult efforts. And big chances towards the top. Those are the easy ones. Liverpool are just trouncing everyone's like by and far like the best team out there. City closely followed, and then Man United close to that. So probably that backs up what you were saying about best chances created, Rob. With Man United, but they're just not as good at converting. Although Man City, their conversion numbers in their bubbles aren't actually too much greater than Man United. I think Man United have struggled away from home a little bit. I think they've got 6 goals in 4 games, I think it is, as opposed to 10 goals in 4 at home. So there is a little bit of a disparity there. But they'll be at home for Liverpool, so we'll see. Wolves are the bit interesting one. They've scored a lot of big chances, but not many. They've had a lot of big chances, but not many small ones. So that's a bit of an interesting uniqueness. I'm not sure what's going on there. But Watford seem to be struggling in general. So does Spurs. That Spurs is an interesting one. Harry Kane and Son do present themselves as decent options from game week 12. So hopefully that team prowess does improve in the next few game weeks, but they haven't been scoring too much in the last few, so that probably does make sense. But what this does say to me, Rob, is that there's a lot of teams bunched up in the middle, at the bottom end, and there's not really many teams other than Liverpool, City and United pressing to close that gap, as West Ham did at the start of the season, as Villa did towards the end of last season, as Leeds did for the most of last season. We haven't seen that any of these teams bunch up, which is probably why we're focusing on defence at the moment, right? Yeah. So fingers crossed that changes going forwards, but it does mean that we've got a smorgasbord of weird midfielders to choose from that are the highest scoring players, like Doucouré and Damari Gray and Townsend and all of these players that just seem so counterintuitive. So it's a bit of an enigma at the moment. We can talk about midfielders and forwards themselves going forwards, but what do you make of this? Does anything stand out to you?
Yeah, I think this is another great chart where it just puts it in simple terms that Liverpool is easily right now the best attacking side. And I was quite surprised to know that Man City and Man United have both scored the same amount of goals, 16.
Well,
So 16 goals. And so are Chelsea. So Chelsea, Man City, and Man United have all scored 16 goals. All the same.
from different stats presumably. So some have overperformed, some have underperformed. Interestingly, just to I have to mention underperformance once per video, don't I? But Liverpool were massively underperforming in the first 5 game weeks of the season. They're now overperforming, so that shows there is a little bit of toing and froing. So we definitely can predict this. I'm going to press this. I'm going to shout this home till the cows come home. So yeah. But yeah, I'm not sure there's much else to talk about other than the fact that everyone's a bit rubbish at the moment going forwards. So hopefully that can change. But let's move on and talk about the midfielders and forwards themselves. We've got another chart which is small attempts, that's shots and chances created combined, but the difficult ones across the bottom. So furthest to the right, that's Bruno Fernandes, who's best for those. And then the big attempts, which are the shots and chances created, but the easy ones towards the top. And Salah, there's no surprise that he's best for that, closely followed by Sadio Mane. So top right would be the best. We've got a weird one in Gundogan sitting there, but I think it's a bit misleading because he hasn't played for the last few games, and there's only 3 games that are counting here in the last 6 in which he scored in one. But give him the benefit of the doubt. He might continue that when he gets back to form. But treat that one with a pinch of salt. The interesting things from this one are Cristiano Ronaldo's falling a little bit flat, and especially Lukaku. So that worries me from a premium standpoint. My question to you, Rob, is if you could pick 2 or maybe 3 premiums right now, if you were wildcarding, would you change from Ronaldo or Lukaku? Or, I mean, Salah seems essential, right?
Salah's just not going anywhere. It's like double anyone else, and I've just said he's probably the best player in the world at the moment, currently. Actually, on my fan team, I have Mane, not Salah. Just for funds, I just play around on that one, and he was my captain. And honestly, that massive when I talked earlier about playing like a 5-3-2 with 2 budget strikers, like a Jimenez and Tony, or Antonio and Tony, something like that, and having like a Salah, Mane, Rafinha midfield and a big back 5 with a decent-ish bench like a Gallagher or Smith Rowe. Why not? Like, Liverpool are way out in front in terms of their attacking prowess and their goals scored. They're 6 goals more than anyone else. They're clearly looking like a really solid side. Haven't lost this so far this season. Why not go for that? Because I know people argue about captain's points, or because he's a couple million, couple 0.2 or 0.3, whatever it is, difference between him and Salah, he loses a bit of value. He's 11.9, Salah's 12.8. But when people are looking at likes of Fernandes at 11.8 and maybe like a Kevin De Bruyne as a punt, but why not Mane? Why not do a Mane Salah? Mane's 3.1% owned.
Yeah.
No, you're not going to captain him, but it's about points. If you, and Mane's 3rd right now. So if you're looking at a big midfield 3 of like Salah, Son, and Mane, and cheap out elsewhere, then they're killing it at the minute.
I don't see why not. I mean, especially as Liverpool are head and shoulders above the rest in terms of the stats, so they are crunching it. But Salah is arguably a perma captain choice at the moment. That might change, but his consistency is just outstanding. Like, he's only blanked. He's not scored in 1 Premier League game this season. That was game week 2. He scored 1 goal in every single game other than that. Yep. For a captaincy option, plus plenty of assists. But he as a captaincy option, he's just absolutely out of this world. And if you want to plump on Liverpool as a unit, why not double up with Mane if you think that they're just going to destroy every single game? I don't see anything wrong with that at all. Fernandes, he's got some tough fixtures coming up. Lukaku has some poor stats but good fixtures. And same with Ronaldo as opposed to Fernandes, like some tough fixtures coming up, and he hasn't looked on it recently. So, but that his fate might be tied to that of Man United. So it's an interesting dilemma. De Bruyne is another one to consider, but difficult to fit in. Why not double up on Liverpool? Why not? What do you think about Jota at the moment? Because
I've never been interested in him because I know I couldn't deal with it. I'm fine with my defenders getting rotated out because they're like 5 million for a defender that gets swapped out for like a 5.5 million midfielder if he doesn't play. For me and Jota, I've never had him this season. I've no interest and no worry about a 7.5 million midfielder that comes in and out and isn't particularly clinical. I went Simicast over him, and it seemed to work out for me.
yeah,
I still think Firmino is the number one person in that team down the middle. And yeah, he can come on, but if I'm spending 7.5 million, I want him to play. And if you can deal with it, if you've got a good bench and you can deal with him not playing, then that's fine. I know I'm sat here with Mason Mount.
Yeah, that's why I was laughing.
I understand, but that's not because Mason Mount isn't, I think, not in Chelsea's strongest 11. He's been injured and he's been playing international football. Diogo Jota is not inside Liverpool's strongest 11. And for 7.5 million, I think he starts, one every 5 or 2 every 5, maybe?
Who knows?
7.5 million. And like I said, I've got Trent, I've got Salah. I would rather go double Liverpool defense like Van Dijk for 6.5 million and double up on that Liverpool defense because they're well in the charts and doing well defensively, rather than 7.5 million for Jota, who plays 1 or 2 every 5.
It's a really difficult dilemma, isn't it? I think that price point at 7.5 million is really difficult at the moment. A lot of people going Foden, but the 2 games that he has played, look at his stats. He's there on the left. It hasn't been like set in the world light. He scored a clinical goal. He got an assist.
And he was lucky. He got a fantasy assist.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I mean,
he took a shot that was fluffed. The defender should have cleared it, and he didn't. And Bernardo Silva capped it in. It was Greenwood-esque. When I was complaining about Greenwood earlier on in the season with fortunate goalkeeper errors and Ronaldo getting his goals from spillages and stuff, that's it for me. And for Foden, apart from Kevin De Bruyne, I'm not interested in City's attacking assets. I'm not interested in Jota. So why not double up on midfielders if we're talking about here? But I said before, a lot of people say people ignore Vardy and people ignore Son. And that's right. I mean, I've not ignored Son. I'm like his number one fan, right? I've been banging that drum all season. But I'll hold up my hands and say Jamie Vardy in my side has never crossed my mind because I've watched Leicester this season. They were very good against Manchester United. The other 7 games have been rubbish. But Jamie Vardy still finds a way to score goals.
Yeah, and he's been super consistent in the last 4. If he'd gone Vardy over Lukaku, you'd be quids in because Lukaku's got 2 points in every game.
He's the best. He's ahead of Antonio. He's the best forward. He's on 56. Lukaku's on 31.
But this is the issue. This is what Vardy does. This is why he's so difficult to pick. It's because you have to pick him with a gut feeling because he never has the numbers to justify the pick. Nope. And then once he's scored, then his stats improve on a retrospective basis. And it's just like so difficult.
It's him and Son are known as the stat busters.
Yes, exactly.
They just get goals and he just gets bonus when he scores goals.
Yeah.
Seriously, there's no reason why I've gone for Lukaku, or anyone's gone Lukaku over Jamie Vardy, because he hasn't just done it this year. He does it pretty much every year. He got 15 goals last year. He got 23 goals the year before. He got 18 goals the year before. He got 20 goals the year before. He got 13 goals the year before. He got 24 goals the year before. He's done it year in, year out. And we still sit there and say, well, his price has gone up a little bit. He's gone up 0.5. His price has gone up. His price has gone up. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like he's been killing it for years.
Yeah, you just need to find the purple patches.
Why have I not gone Jamie Vardy?
Because he goes for runs of form where he doesn't score, and then he gets consistent patches where he does. So I've definitely analysed this in the past. I'm like, I need to jump on Vardy when he starts scoring, but I never do. And it just seems counterintuitive every single time. But we have a number of these players in the Premier League, like Greenwood, like Foden even, that they're just clinical. They're brilliant strikers of the ball. They can score from anywhere. So it's not a bad shout going for these players, but it's just you're in the dark, basically. There's no clue about whether they're going to gain form or not. And Foden's got a couple of fantasy returns in the last two, so maybe that's enough form for it to continue. But the 7.5 midfielder price point is super difficult. Like Mason Mount, I'm not unhappy owning him with the fixtures ahead. But the likes of Jota, Foden, Grealish, I would have gone Grealish instead of Mount. And he's arguably a worse option than Mason Mount going forward. So it's an absolute minefield, I think, at the moment. Really, really difficult. I think Rafinha is a decent option, but I think quite a lot of people already have Rafinha, so he's like a template player. So it's definitely an interesting one.
He's under 20%, so it's not. It's more like Twitter template than general template.
That's true.
Under 20% is not a bad return for you there. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, Alexander-Arnold's only 23%. I can't believe that he's sunk to that level, but it'll be great when he hauls and everyone.
I can't believe Luke Shaw's gone from like a 50% owned player to like a 25% owned player, and he's lost 0.1 million in value.
Yeah, that's weird. It must have been
was he over 50%? Wasn't he the most owned player at the start of the season? Now he's 25.9%, and he's dropped 0.1.
It must be like a gradual bleed every single game week of transfers out, and
which is ironic because that's what it feels like owning him.
Yeah, it does actually. It's a pity because he had a brilliant end to the last season. He had a great Euro campaign, and
then he plays for Manchester United. You realise defensively, it's a never-ending nightmare.
Yeah. But a couple other players to mention. We've got Jimenez up there. Lots of big attempts compared to small attempts. We've got Tony and Mbomo or Mbomo, or however you pronounce it. A lot of grief in the chat for the pronunciation. I think
they type it out like it helps.
Yeah, it's just interesting ones. We've got Tielemans there and Townsend, and they just seem counterintuitive. I can't bring myself to bring a player like that.
I just want to do one brief thing about Townsend, right? And why I think Everton and DCL could be right back on the radar. So Everton are well out in front for most crosses, and Townsend is the most crosser.
The most crosser. I love it.
The crossiest player. The man of the cross is Townsend, and the team of crosses, the crossers, Everton. So I just wanted to point out that, Calvert-Lewin was a great asset at the start of the season, just like he was at the start of last season. He's been said that he's still not quite there yet. He's still not ready to return for Everton, and he's 8 million. So if you're looking to save money and you don't want it, they've got Watford, Wolves, and Tottenham. So if he was available for that, it would have been fantastic. Because if you've got the most crossing player in Townsend for the most crossing team in Everton, sticking the ball on who usually is top of the charts for best aerial, which is Dominic Calvert-Lewin, that's just like a match made in heaven. I said right at the start of the season, I said pre-season, that's how Rafa works, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember when I said about Everton crossing the ball and a lot, and Calvert-Lewin is the best in the air. That's perfect.
I remember us talking about this when
I mentioned about the tactics.
Yeah. But I'm just wondering. I was just looking on my phone, like when Calvert-Lewin is expected back, and it's still an unknown return.
Unknown, yeah, it's a real shame. But if they can, and then unfortunately it's Spurs and City, Brentford and Liverpool, so that run isn't great. So this is maybe something for the future when Calvert-Lewin's back, unless he manages to get back for like Wolves and Spurs. But just a little caveat: Townsend's on the list. A lot of people have actually picked him up because he's one of the highest scoring midfielders. He's 5.7 million. He's 10% owned. But if you've got a person who crosses it a lot and a team that crosses it a lot, the missing link for Everton, I think, is Calvert-Lewin, who is usually the best in the air. So that was just something I wanted to point out.
We'll keep our eyes out for Calvert-Lewin's return, and I'll definitely be considering him as part of a front three when he's back. But because it all makes sense, as you say, in terms of the crossing. The last thing I want to discuss on this chart is Antonio here, and there's going to be a dilemma ahead of us because his stats are insane for his price, like very, very decent. Elite compared to Salah, Mane, Fernandez, but his fixtures are getting tough. And he's looked, when I've watched the game, I watched a little bit of West Ham Everton at the weekend. He just looked a little bit sluggish. I think his stats were fairly decent still, but can we see him waning a little bit and the move to a Tony or similar be on the cards? Because I think that's what I'm edging towards, but I'm not sure whether it will come back to bite me considering his stats are so good.
I asked you last week when I said a lot of people are thinking of taking Antonio on the wild card, and straight away you were like, no. And I was with you. I said, no, I'm not looking at it. So you're a bit more shaken because it's not the first time he's looked a bit laggy. He looked a bit laggy against Southampton and got sent off. And then last game week 7, West Ham as a whole looked laggy against Brentford, and then they looked laggy again. I mean, they've got the 3 points, so I mean, fair play to them, but Antonio was making not the best decisions. I don't think that he looked particularly great. It all depends on people's setups. I mean, if you got Antonio at 8 million down to a 4.4 million and you want to splash the cash elsewhere, you could do that. But if you need to go up to Lukaku or move around or down to Tony, for example, what are we keeping hold of Antonio for? They've got Spurs. Spurs concede goals, not great defensively. Then they've got Villa and Liverpool, Wolves. So game week 11, 12, 13, they've got the 3 best defensive teams.
And then City after that as well.
Then Brighton. Sorry, the best defensive teams in terms of stats, big chances conceded, and all the charts that you've done. Game week 11, Liverpool, 12, Wolves, 13, City, 14, Brighton, 15, Chelsea. They are literally the best statistic and goals conceded teams in the Premier League.
Yeah, it's worrying for Antonio owners. It's a bit of
from game week 11, why would I not consider switching him or use him to get that money to bring in Son or jump up to Kane?
Yeah, or even a switch to Tony for me. Like that's what I'm considering. To Tony
if you don't have him already because their fixtures are good from 10, but wait a week on Brentford and why not? He plays the best 5 teams defensively or 6 teams in a row.
It's interesting. What's his ownership? Is it still sky high?
45.8%. So it's just one of them where if you don't have him and he scores, you're going to tumble down the rank.
It's tough, isn't it? I think Ben Rama's a sell from my perspective if you still own him, but Antonio probably gets 1 or 2 more games for me to see if he can rectify some form. We'll have to see. It's going to be a bit of a tough sell, let's just say that, but I think it's probably an optimal move, maybe, to move to Tony because of the fixtures. I'm not sure I can go into that Brentford run of 3 without owning a Brentford player. And it would be between Mount or Antonio. And just saying that makes it sound silly. Like, clearly Mount would be the one that goes. But it's a case of form versus fixture. But Antonio doesn't even have any form. So it's a bit of a strange one. But we'll have to see. I'll cross the bridge when I come to it. It might be next week, but he definitely gets Tottenham for me before any changes. All right, let's move to have a look at how you're set up for game week 9. This is your bus team. We've got a 4-4-2, captain Salah. We can argue about that in a minute. I don't know why I'm arguing because it's a perfectly legitimate option. The thing I want to argue with you most about is Tony bench.
I know. I haven't. It's a bust team. Obviously, it could change. But I'm looking at it, and people straight away will argue Gallagher, Tony in, Gallagher out. But I've said it a load of times before that midfielders just get more points when they score goals and get assists and get bonus and clean sheet points. And I know Tony's got Leicester, and Leicester concede goals. They've not looked fantastic at the back, but Leicester looked really good against United. And Tony's not getting the points. I'm going to see how Gallagher does against Arsenal. But if Gallagher's got Newcastle at home and Tony has got Leicester, why am I going to go Tony over Gallagher?
It's an interesting one.
I mean, Christensen's got Norwich. So for me, that's a if he plays, that's a clean sheet.
It's not so much.
Potential.
It's not so much about the dilemma about which player to pick. It's how you've set your team up, which is you've got some decent players in defence. But that also means you've got plenty of cash over to spend on another really decent player who you're just benching. So there's a lot of money on your bench, and this is why I don't like 4 or 5 at the back. And I know you do, so I respect that.
6.3. But also just remember that Cancelo might get rotated out this game week. Christensen might get rotated out. So I want that strength because, I mean, what are the chances do you think out of 100% do you think my 11 players start?
I don't know, but we don't have control.
Neither do I. That's why Tony's sat there on the bench.
But we don't have control of that. It's your job to put the best starting 11 out there and assume that they all play. And the problem is that you're going to, on normal game weeks where we don't have crazy international breaks, that most of your 11 are going to play, if not all of them most game weeks. So you're going to have a lot of points sat on your bench occasionally, and that sort of just makes me angry. So
I'd rather have him in my squad and bring them in. So Tony, when I brought him in, I knew sometimes I'd bench him against Leicester, but then in the future when Tony's playing against Norwich, then the likes of Gallagher drops down to the bench. You know, I'm playing the fixtures in that situation.
Yeah, it's just that.
I know what you mean, but all I could do is say Tony plays and I got Gallagher down by 1.3 million. So I've got 0.8 million in the bank. But what else am I going to do with my team?
Yeah,
I'd have to rip it up, like Lukaku down to someone and spread the money that way, or use that because let's just say I go Tony down to a 4-something million. Mount can only go up to like a 9 million midfielder. I don't want any midfielders that are around 9 million.
You could, yeah, I guess so. You need to find a million somewhere else. But if you wanted to get Son in from game week 12, you could easily do Diaz down to a 4 million, Mount up to a whatever, Mount up to Son and find the million elsewhere.
No, I'll get rid. I'll get rid of Mount or Lukaku before I get rid of any of my defenders.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You've got the flexibility, you've got the good bench, but I'm not sure that necessarily means you've got the best starting 11 you can have. And that's an interesting thing. You've got a really good squad management, but your starting 11's going to suffer occasionally, and that just troubles me a little bit. There's that saying, always play the attacking player if you've got a dilemma about whether to play the defensive player or an attacker.
But that's the thing. I don't have I think Man City going to Brighton is a clean sheet as well. So then my only dilemma is, do I drop Trent over Tony? And then I've got a 7.5 million player sat on my bench instead of a 6.3.
It's just my perspective, and I'm sure many people have different perspectives to mine. So that's completely fair.
That's the thing, right? Because Mount's the one who, for me, is the worst one in that side. But he's got Norwich. I can't drop him for that. I'm surely he's going to be back. He's a nightmare. I just made that transfer.
Yeah,
I made that. I wish I didn't.
I
wish I still had Son. I miss him so much.
Mount's a really difficult one. I'm just really hoping that Tuchel just starts playing him.
If he starts, he's such a good option.
Especially with this run of fixtures. I'm just hoping that they change it up, because they need to be a little bit more attacking, a little bit more fluid, feed the ball to Lukaku, who is a flat track bully. Let's just hope that happens, because the formation they played against Brentford was not fluid and they did not create many chances. Lukaku didn't really have much of a sniff.
Was it 5 shots in the box total, something like that? Because I know the manager afterwards was, really pleased and saying, "Oh, we limited Chelsea to such a low amount of chances."
Yeah, something like that. I mean, regardless of the numbers, if you just watch the entire game, like as a Lukaku owner, I was getting pretty frustrated watching Chelsea trying to attack. It was a bit.
I was the same the week before when against Southampton, just nothing there.
So let's talk about your captaincy shout. This is.
Do you want to do your team and then we can?
Okay. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Let's move on to my team.
I'll let me rip your team, and then we'll talk about captaincy. We'll do that.
A much more sensible 3-4-3 compared to
what you bench your Livramento 6 points every week. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, he's not gonna have 6 points every week. Goodness me, you choked me up. I think that
He's got Burnley at home. You're not playing Livramento. This is madness.
no, I don't know. I mean, Saints have been pretty solid at the back. It has to be said, but I mean, it's Livramento is a decent first sub option. He
is. I'm just playing with you.
Yeah, you are playing with me, but Ben White drops to second bench option. I mean, either I've got strength and depth, so I'm like, oh, it is what it is. But 3-4-3 seems a little bit more natural to me, and I've got Saka in there. I've arguably the three best defenders after I transfer in Chilwell from Semedo. I haven't made that transfer yet, by the way. I just wanted to put it in so it looks nice, but it might.
You know what? I'm going to do that next week. I'm just going to send you a team sheet that's got Son, Mane, Salah, De Bruyne. I'm going to say I haven't got this team yet, but I mean it looks nice.
It's only one player. This is legitimately probably my transfer. I might go Reece James. Probably will go Chilwell. We'll have to see. But I'm pretty happy with those back three. I think what we saw from the defender chart, it looks pretty strong. Mason Mount's the weakness. Antonio, decent stats, poor form. Saka, we'll see what he does tonight, but not sure about him either. So there's plenty of worries here, but I think on paper it looks like a fairly decent team. Let's have a little captaincy argument. I've gone Lukaku against Norwich. That's a fixture choice. You're going to Salah, Man United. That's a form choice. So it's a classic form versus fixtures. And I think a lot of people in the community, a lot of content creators will have the same argument this week. Do you go form or do you go fixtures? Why are you going Salah? And it's pretty obvious, but say it anyway.
Best player in the world, best FPL asset so far. He's got double the points for everyone else. He plays for the most attacking team, who scored the most amount of goals, who statistically are the best in terms of expected goals. And I trust him. And I've captained Lukaku. I'll say this to everyone now, right? Everyone, if you captained Salah every single game week in the first 8 games, you'd have more points. 99% of the people watching, if they just captain Salah every single game week and they didn't go with fixtures, they saw that he was on fire, they saw Liverpool playing well, they saw his form. I know it's easy to look back. I'm not trying to do it in hindsight, but if we just captain Salah every single week, you'd have more points. And I've trusted Lukaku before, and I've trusted Ronaldo before with captaincy. We've talked about Chelsea's lack of attack. I listed off in binary language the amount of goals that position in a 2 side has scored. He's not scored in 4 games. And ownership for me comes into it a little bit. So Salah is 64% owned. His effective ownership is going to be higher than 100 no matter what. So he's going to work against me, right? Lukaku's 36.5% owned. I think a lot of people are going to captain him, but I think if I can keep that under, because my rank is like 1 million, even though I'm only 22 points behind you, whatever, I still think his effective ownership for my rank is going to be lower than 100. So I can be happy captaining Salah, who I think is the best player. But Lukaku scores a goal or gets 20 points or whatever, I still get those points. Yeah. You know, Salah's proven it by getting a double-digit haul against Man City and against Palace and against Chelsea. He's done it against the big teams. United, we know concede goals. We know that they're weak at the back. And Salah's on penalties. Lukaku, he's done nothing to... You've got to trust your player you give the armband to, right?
Yeah,
it's
agreed.
not just about a fixture. Lukaku has shown me absolutely nothing to make me trust him earning me double points this game week. And if he does, if he goes off and gets 10 points or 12 points, whatever, I still get those points. But I still think Mo Salah will do something every single game. And I know he's got Norwich. And look, and I've said this before, and people will just scream at me for it. Why would this maybe not be the game Lukaku gets a rest?
No. Don't even start.
Just hear me out.
Don't even start.
He comes back from Belgium with muscle fatigue. He plays against Brentford. He gets benched against Brentford in the, 76th minute. He's got Champions League this week. If there was one single game, if I'm the manager of Chelsea and I need to look after Lukaku, why would I not bench him at home to Norwich, who are by far and large the worst team in the Premier League right now?
I mean, you just said
I'm
it.
not saying he's going to bench him. I'm not saying that he's definitely going to be benched. Just think of it from a managerial point of view that you've got to protect your big star striker, your spearhead of the attack, the main man up front that you spent 100 million on. If there was ever a game to give him a break, it would be against the easiest one where you can trust someone else to go and play up front.
I get it. There's some logic to it, but I mean, I don't think any of us are actually expecting that to happen. And I mean, the man needs a goal. I mean, he hasn't scored in 4 Premier League games, maybe even more than that. I'm not sure, but I mean, you've just said it. It's the easiest fixture of the season. Norwich at home. If you can't captain your premium player in the easiest fixture of the year, then why do you even own him?
Yeah, don't worry. I've asked myself this question. Why have I got Lukaku? And I said it when he signed. I never truly believed that he was the main striker I really wanted in my side because of the way Chelsea play. And I didn't back myself. And I haven't backed myself with a big five at the back. And it's my mistake by letting other things influence me. If I was to wildcard right now, Lukaku, even though he's got Norwich, Lukaku wouldn't be in my side.
Yeah.
I'd have double Chelsea defense and probably Mount still, because Mount offers me value at 7.4 million. You're right. If I'm not captaining a player who's worth 11.7 million, why have I got him in my side? Which is an excellent question. Now, Mane, I talked earlier about having Mane in my side for 11.9 million, but he does offer me those points. I trust Mane. I wouldn't captain him over Salah. I'd probably still go for Salah. But if Mane's still getting me the points, then I can understand it. Lukaku's done nothing.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Nothing. And I know you're telling he's against the worst team. I do completely agree that it's the biggest fixture game that he can have. You can't get a nicer fixture than Norwich at home, but it's rotatable. It's early subbable for him if he does start. And it's your one decision a week where your guy gets double the points. You got to trust him. And he's not earned my trust.
Okay, let's put it this way.
Simple as that.
I think this is why it's such a poignant argument this week, is because it's sometimes it's a form versus fixtures, but it's not like that clear cut. But this is a really, really big swing. We've got Lukaku, who hasn't got any attacking returns in the last 4 against the worst team in the league. And then we've got Salah, who's got endless attacking returns against Man United, who are, perceivably a decent side, even though they've been struggling, occasionally defensively, which probably maybe does swing it towards Salah. But would you have the same dilemma if Salah was playing City? I'm not sure it makes that much of a difference, considering what Salah did to City a couple of game weeks ago.
If Salah was against City away, I probably would have. That would be more difficult. I'd have to consider it more than I've considered this. But I just want to ask you as well about United's defense, right? If I told you Arsenal, would you captain Salah against Arsenal?
Oh, it depends who the other players in my side were. But yes, I mean, I think Arsenal was probably an easier fixture. Yeah. I think you captain Salah against most teams. They conceded
the same amount of goals as Manchester United.
Yeah, 10. Yeah, absolutely. And we saw from the defensive chart earlier how Man United were struggling along with Chelsea, and plenty of other weaklings at the defensive line. So I think Salah's a perfectly reasonable captain shout. I'm not sure why I own a player if I can't captain him at home in the easiest fixture in the entire season.
So you're not worried about effective ownership, because I know you're taking a bigger risk by not captaining Salah, because his effective ownership will bite you more than Lukaku's will bite me.
Yeah, it's definitely a sword.
You're not worried that you're making a bigger risk that if Salah gets 10 points and Lukaku gets 12, you win, right? Like you are on top by a couple of points, but that's the risk that you're going to play.
Yeah, it's definitely a sword versus a shield pick. And I think the Salah is the shield, Lukaku is the sword because of his lower ownership. But the thing that probably swings it for me is that if you just ignore what's happened in the previous games and just treat these games in isolation just by your perceived view of these players, The Man United fixture, we've talked about this before earlier in the video, is a derby game, and sort of the stats can go out the window. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen. Maybe Man United, the event, the players start going, this is a big occasion. I need to really put my, I need to put in a good shift. And maybe Liverpool struggle a little bit more than they usually would. Whereas Lukaku against the worst side in the league should score a couple of goals, in my opinion. So it's an interesting one. I don't think there's any clear-cut decision. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's just interesting that we're taking different approaches here. And it's Lukaku for me. But
you can't. But the only issue I have with that, Ted, is like, you can't just take it in isolation. You can't, like, in the past, I've been a big fixtures person over form, and that's why it's not successful for me. And I think I'm wrong. I think I'm leaning towards the form. Like, I can't just take it in isolation, because it's not like Lukaku's having chances and wasting it. If Mount plays, I'll feel a bit more excited. Every time I see like Werner on that starting lineup, I just think, oh, this is going to be just horrible for Lukaku. And it's proven to be the case. When you've got, if Mount and Havertz play behind Lukaku, I'm more excited. I believe in him more. If it's Werner with Lukaku, I'm thinking, I'm trusting Timo Werner to try and set up Lukaku here, or vice versa. And it's just Lukaku dropped it down to Werner against Brentford and he skied it.
Yeah.
So,
hopefully
Salah, I trust everyone around him. He's going to lay it off to Mane. He's going to lay it off to Firmino. Trent's going to pull it back to. I trust everyone around him. It comes down for me for trust as well.
I get it. You make a really convincing argument, 100%. And as a Liverpool fan, I completely agree. Like, I think you can definitely trust him. Like, even more so this year, he's being even more consistent than he usually is. So it is a really difficult one. I'm not sure whether I'll move from one to the other, but I mean, just my gut says Lukaku just because of the fixture. But who knows at the end of the day? You said you can't treat it in isolation, but that is literally what captaincy is. That is why it's the most difficult thing. That's the most difficult decision in FPL, to get captaincy right every week. Because it's not like you're picking a player for the next 6. You're picking your captain for one game. It's like you're at the bookies trying to get, put an outcome on one single match. We all know how difficult that is. It's no clear-cut opportunity, which is why in FPL, a lot of the best managers get a consistently good rank every week because every season, because it's a long-term game. Captaincy is not a long-term game, which is why it's a difficult decision. So I don't think, from what you were saying, I think you're really convincing about the Salah argument. I think plenty of sensible managers will go Salah captain. I don't see anything wrong with it. I think I've said to myself at the start of the season that I'll captain a premium asset at home, a really good fixture. I've
tried that, and that's the thing. My captaincy blanks have come when I've done it the way that you're doing it now, because I've backed Lukaku already this season, and I've backed Ronaldo as well this season with the captaincy.
Yeah,
and both of them let me down, and Salah has just not. He's blanked once all season.
It's a really difficult dilemma. But I mean, this is why we like FPL. This is why it's difficult. We're going to get decisions right. We're going to get it wrong. Mostly wrong for me this season, but surely that's about to change. Who knows? I think we'll leave it there. That was a good discussion, mate. Hopefully your Salah captain works out.
And you just know that like Salah and Lukaku's going to blank, and it's going to be like a Cancelo 20-point haul, or Antonio comes back and bangs a 20-pointer or something. You just know that's what it's been like. Or Livramento with a 20-pointer, and we've got him sat first and second bench.
That's just the outcome, though. Like, our job is to put the best team out there in a starting 11 on paper and just see what happens, because we're never going to get everything right. That's some consolation anyway. But yeah, thanks for everyone for joining us in the chat, keeping us company through that discussion. We've got through plenty of content. Hopefully it was useful to you, and hopefully you gained some happiness out of our poor ranks and our red arrows, which hopefully...
it's early. This is I'm usually 4 point something million by now, and then the climb happens to almost 100k. That's my thing.
Yeah,
So
fingers crossed for
this is
some.
nosebleed for me right now.
We've both got 2 players left tonight. 2 Arsenal for me, 2 Palace for you. So hopefully those red arrows turn into green, and we can see each other next week with some green arrows instead. But for now, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Rob, for joining me, and best of luck for Game Week 9, mate.
Yeah, you too. Well,
Okay.
less luck than me, but yeah.
Easy. I was being nice.
I need to come back.